unit each down, and we had further trips of a unit each at Kriel, Majuba and Matimba. Now these are very large units and they are quite crucial, so you will have noticed last night that we issued an alert that there was a risk of load shedding. We managed to navigate our way through peak hour without implementing load shedding, but it again demonstrates how tightly balanced the system is. This morning we have been able to return Kriel Unit 2 to service at just after 5 o'clock this morning. However, at 5:45, Medupi 3 tripped. Now Medupi 3, that's another big unit, 720 megawatts. We expect this unit to be back by evening peak. Then, unfortunately, we also lost Duva Unit 5, and that is at a capacity of 520 megawatts. At this point in time, we do not have a forecast return to service time, but our crews are working flat out on that unit. There are some challenges with some of the controls at that unit that need addressing. We are running diesel. At the moment we've got 8 OCGTs in operation. This is of course not desirable. OCGTs are intended to operate on a peaking basis only to tide us over peaks, so the continued high levels of diesel consumption are not desirable. Our dams are still in good condition. We think that there is an adequate reserve there to protect us against sudden outages, and our diesel levels are being replenished as we speak. So from a reserves capacity, the system is reasonably under control. During the day, we expect that Kendall 4 will return to service by 4 o'clock this afternoon. That is 640 megawatts. However, we do have a number of units that are at high risk. This number totals 1,187 megawatts. The total risk of units where we are operating with known issues, known challenges, is sitting at 6,345. So again, a high number and indicative of the risk that we have inherent in the system at this point in time. Over the weekend, we intend to take out 7 units at a number of power stations to address some of these known faults. That means that we will take off 3,842 megawatts. Demand over the weekend typically is significantly lower, so we don't expect this maintenance program per se to cause load shedding, but of course if we have breakdowns, the risk will remain. Once we have implemented those repairs, we should be in a position to return after weekend with finished dam levels and also with our diesel levels being restored and those challenges that we have addressed over the weekend. So colleagues, that's where we are. I'm joined this morning by a number of our power station general managers. We are going to give them an opportunity to address some of the questions. I see Chris Yelland has already asked a question about a boiler tube leak at Kusile Unit 2. After an extended outage, the unit came back, and in very short order of time, it then developed a boiler tube leak, and Chris quite correctly asks the question, it's a new plant, why did this happen? If we can get Bonga on the line. Bonga, if you are available, then if you could please make yourself known and address this particular question, please.
Okay. Thank you, Andre. and morning to everybody. Can you hear me, Andre?
Yes, Bonga, you're loud and clear. Allow me to introduce you, Bonga Mashazi, Power Station General Manager of Kusile. He's been there a relatively short period of time, but in that period he has already started to turn things around, but obviously we've experienced some challenges now with this boiler tube leak. Please, brief explanation in simple language as you can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andre. Okay, at Kusile, we are having a boiler tube leak on our unit number 1. Yesterday, which is on the 16th, at about 8:30, we received the suspicion of a tube leak from our operating staff, and they called our engineering team to come and investigate and confirm if indeed it is a tube leak. After the investigation, it was confirmed that there is a tube leak at about 63-meter level on the area between the evaporator and the superheater inlet area. So we then deloaded because the steam was coming out of the legging and clagging at around 70-meter level. And then at 15:30, we shut down the unit in order for us to do the repairs. As is, we are currently busy with the force cooling in order to gain safe access to the area such that we can have a detailed inspection in order to quantify the extent of damage. Once that is done, the repairing scope of work will be developed and issued after board visual inspection and the non-destructive testing that we must do. Based on the findings, we will know the duration of the repairs, and we will continue to do a detailed investigation, including the analysis of failure mechanism, for us to know the root cause of the tube leak so that we can put the measures in place. We are currently busy with the resources, Andre, and the media mobilizing to make sure that we can repair this tube leak as quickly as we can. Maybe a bit about responding on the question. Yes, this unit was on an interim repairs outage, which started on the 12th of June to the 14th of September. On this area where we have a current boiler tube leak, no work was carried out as it was identified as an area that is not a high risk. We don't have a lot of history on these areas. We only did dirty inspections and there was no defects that were found. So through the process of root cause analysis and analyzing the failure mechanism, we can then be in a position to know why did we have it on this area. Thank you, Andrew.
Right, thanks very much, Bonga. Chris, I hope that that's addressed your question regarding the boiler tube leak at Kusile. It is, however, disappointing that we have a new plant that is not performing as it should, and clearly that's indicative of the state of our new build plants, that they are not delivering as they should, and clearly that is part of the reason why we are facing significant constraints. Right, Sikanati, over to you, please.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you, colleagues. So I will now consider Chris's questions adequately addressed and move on to Lamis Omarji from FIN24. The question is, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is in an interview saying that load shedding has increased under Durator's leadership and there are no results to see from the plant maintenance program. Eskom think there is an understanding in the government about the extent of the damage to plants and the maintenance rate. Is Mr. Durator concerned that there is a lack of confidence in his leadership from parts of government? What is the quality of the working relationship between Eskom and National Treasury? Quite a few questions for you there, Andre. I will go next to Mariam Issa after you have addressed this question. Thank you.
Thanks, Lumis. Those are, of course, very interesting questions that you've asked. I don't particularly want to comment on opinions voiced by the Minister of Finance. I think that is in the political domain. I will leave that to the Minister of Public Enterprises to respond to. As I've indicated before, I'm appointed by the board of Eskom. The board in turn is appointed by the Minister of Public Enterprises. If they've lost confidence in me, then it's up to them to sever ties with me and request me to leave. The statement that's being made that I'm being afforded space for maintenance that previously wasn't afforded to some of my predecessors is actually quite an interesting one. It suggests that there was a deliberate decision, which may or may not be correct, to defer maintenance under the leadership of my predecessors, and of course that just exacerbates the current challenges that we are facing. The relationship that we have with National Treasury is a constructive one. I believe that we have access to senior officials in National Treasury to address some of the issues that we have. There are significant challenges with procurement. I've referred to our procurement challenges that we experienced before. For example, using an Eskom wholly owned subsidiary called ERI Rotec, where we are not allowed to use that subsidiary without testing the market. This slows us down very significantly. We have approached National Treasury with a request for an exemption in this regard. The request was submitted to National Treasury on the 24th of June of this year. As I speak here, no response to that has been received. So that does have an impact on our ability to deploy resources to site to carry out much needed maintenance. And I think that is our major challenge, is on the administration of the Public Finance Management Act. Again, emphasizing that we respect the need to have good governance applicable to dealing with public funds, but we also need to have expeditious resolution to requests that we put to National Treasury. Thank you, Sikonati.
Thank you, Andre. The next set of questions comes from Mariam Issa. Mariam is with Finweek and a freelancer. Is there ever a day for the past weeks when you have been able to avoid using emergency generation backup, both the OCGTs and the pumped water reserves? She carries on. With all these breakdowns, employees must be under severe pressure. Are many people working overtime? And if so, could you give us an idea of how many? Rulani Matebula, you possibly could answer this question, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sikonati, and good morning to the media team. In terms of the diesel, yeah, from the time that we suspended load shedding last week, we had to obviously use our reserves to manage peaks. However, in the past day up to leading to today, we started using diesel extensively to try and sustain supply to meet the demand. In terms of the overtime, I might not be able to give the number of people that are working overtime, but our teams, including our senior engineers as well as our managers, under this condition, they find themselves having to work extra hours to make sure that the country is not left in the dark. The amount of effort that the team is using, it's taking a lot of strain and a lot of sleepless nights in trying to turn around things and trying to restore capacity into the grid. And we will have to continue to do so until the situation normalizes, unfortunately. Thanks, Sikonat.
I thank you, Roland. The next question is for Andre Durations from Torres Creamer of News. What sort of action does Mr. Durator expect in the Portfolio Committee this morning, and what will his main message be? Short one, Andre.
Terence, I suggest you tune in as soon as I'm done with the media conference, and then you can see for yourself what the reception will be. I have no expectations in this regard. I think the main message, apart from addressing the questions raised by the Portfolio Committee in terms of our annual results, which we are finally getting around to presenting, due to delays in the parliamentary calendar caused by local government elections, as well as some questions relating to statements made around Eskom and governance by the Auditor General. We will respond to those questions, and the main message again will be that if questions are asked around load shedding, is that we have consistently told the shareholder and everyone else that we need 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts of new generation capacity as soon as possible, and regrettably progress on this has been slower than required. So that is going to be the main message. Thanks, Sikonati.
Thank you, Andre. Teresa Smith of ESI Africa wants to know, if you do need to implement load shedding or during the rest of the week, do you foresee any trouble with municipalities not complying, and how will you deal with this if it happens? Is Monde Bala on the line, please? Maybe you can help with that question.
Yes, Monde Bala is on the line, Sikonati. Thanks, Teresa, for the question. We certainly hope not. We have been having extensive engagements with all the municipalities that do their own load shedding. As of Friday last week, we've had a joint forum where all the control center officials were in attendance, being led by the system operator, whereby we discussed the issue in detail. So in short, we do not expect any issues with regards to how the load shedding will be executed. We will, however, continue to monitor the situation, and we will intervene whenever it's required. Thank you, Sikonati.
Thank you, Mr. Bala. Monde is Group Executive for Distribution, colleagues, and Rulani Matebula, who spoke earlier, is the Acting Group Executive for Generation. The next question, I do not see any hands, colleagues, so I'm reading all the questions that I have in front of me. Mariam Isa again wants to know, I am interested in information about the use of OCGTs, pumped reserves, etc., extending over several of past weeks, at least a month. Mariam, I believe you want the quantity there of the fuel used in OCGTs. Rulani, if you can answer that question, I will get to it to you just now after the next question from Christian Tifo of Minerals Council. Christian says, Litabo EAF, that's energy availability factor, is high at over 80% availability. What are the learnings for the other power stations that can be used to improve performance? Rulani, can you take those two questions, please?
Yeah. Sikonati, in terms of the amount of diesel used on a day-to-day basis or for the past week, I think we can reply with the appropriate volumes, consolidated volumes from the teams. So if you can allow me to deal with that, maybe outside this meeting, Sikonati, you can coordinate with me. We will be able to deal with that. Just remind me of the second question, please.
Rulani, the second question is that the EAF at Letabo is quite high at above 80% energy availability.
Yes.
What learnings can be taken from there and used to improve performance at the other power stations? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's all the results of the effort and the use of opportunities that we have to look after the plant, and I think it is proof that the Tabo team has done extremely well in looking after the asset, and hence the results are showing. So we obviously need to put the same level of effort, though on other sides like Tutuka, we have got serious challenges that requires serious engineering work that will take time to recover. So it's those type of situations that we currently sit with. To give an example, you don't have your cooling towers efficiency at Tutuka. It's not there. To cover it, you need to do extensive projects, and which is what we're doing. We have done 2 cooling towers already. So for us to recover Tutuka to the level of the tower, we need to do the other 4 cooling towers, which obviously take time. So we obviously have to learn from each other, and from what the Tutuka management team and the Letabo team has done to sustain their performance, and this is a continuous thing that we do within the organization. Thanks, Sikonati.
Sikonati, if I can just add there, one of the key reasons why Letabo is successful is that it is a mouth option. So it has a very consistent feed of coal of an acceptable quality. It's not a particularly good quality coal, but the fact that the feed is consistently the same clearly distinguishes it from power stations that are supplied road from a number of different sources. And this is a pattern that we see all over Eskom, is that when you have coal fed from a single source by conveyor belt, the performance of the power station tends to be significantly better than if you have a poorly controlled supply fed by trucks that come without the ability to blend and homogenize the coal appropriately. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Rulani, for that response too. The next one is from Nantika from Hot 102.7 FM News. The question is, if I remember correctly, Mr. Director mentioned that some plants, such as Kusile, are not operating optimally. What are the main underlying reasons for this? Are plans in place to identify the core issues? Thank you. Rulani, can you take that one?
Yes, Sikonati. When we brought the units of Kusile as well as Medupi, I think we had communicated previously that we have encountered some design constraints, which the team is addressing as we speak. Bonga is here. I think he will be able to, he can be able to allude to it. There's a number of issues that we have identified that needs to be dealt with. We also still at a station like Kusile, still busy with a number of project-related activities, including our coal conveying systems our ashing systems that we are still expanding as we are bringing the units on. So those are some of the constraints that we are experiencing at these new power stations, but the team is dealing with it. We should be getting out of this very soon. Thanks, Sikonati.
Rulani, thank you for that. Andre, do you want to add anything about the design defects and the modifications there to at both Medupi and Kusile?
Yeah, thanks, Sikonati. Of course, we have been making changes to Medupi. We have completed the interventions at all 6 units at Medupi. We will now continue with the process at Kusile. Part of the legacy issue that we are facing, of course, is that in 1998, when Eskom warned the government that new capacity was urgently needed, that warning was not heeded. The delay that subsequently occurred meant that when Medupi and Kusile were conceived, it was designed essentially during construction, which is very far from ideal, and that led to a number of design errors and design defects that we've spoken about extensively in the past, being incorporated into the plants as they stand there today, and these defects are now being rectified. Again, you know, if we as Eskom had the luxury of time to do proper front-end loading as one is required to do with these mega projects and do proper design work, then conceivably these challenges could have been avoided. But because they were built under significant time pressure, these design defects manifested themselves in the actual power stations that were built. Now, this again speaks to the fact that when Eskom says we need 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts of new capacity onto the grid as soon as possible, this is a message that we have consistently been giving to government and to the shareholder, and we look forward to that capacity being made available so that we can get sufficient headroom to carry out the repair work and the maintenance as we've been communicating. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Mwangi's hand was up. Mwangi, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please? Identify yourself before you do that. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear?
We can hear you.
Okay, this is Mwangi from the Cape Argus in Cape Town. I'm just curious, is there such a thing as disappearing units during blackouts? Anecdotal evidence claims that when a surge happens, it drains additional units from your meter. I just wanted to know what the experts say.
You are talking now about units at the consumer's,
At the consumer's point, yes.
meter.
Yes.
Thank you. I will allow Monde to answer that question shortly, Mwangi. Thank you. But I will read first a message from Dieketeng Malike of Business Report. My question is, what is delaying getting exemption from SARS to enable quick procurement? Dieketeng, that would be National Treasury under the Public Finance Management Act. Monde, please address the question on disappearing units for the consumers. Andre, please can you then, after Monde, tell us if Eskom has made contact with National Treasury with regards to acquiring any exemptions under the PFMA? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sikonati. I must be honest, it's the first time I'm hearing of this phenomena. Mwangi will definitely look into it. I am not aware that there is disappearing units once the power returns, but we'll certainly look into it, and if there's any further updates, we'll do so in the future. Thanks, Konate.
Please, Andre. Thank you, Monde.
Thanks, Sikonat. I think that question is addressed to National Treasury. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Terence Kramer wants to know if there is no movement on the way the PFMA is applied to Eskom, what is Eskom's plan for navigating that constraint while ensuring better quality procurement? That is a follow-up, Andre, on Dieketeng's question. Okay, with that.
Terence, that is indeed a challenge. We obviously have to comply with the PFMA. It is the law of the land. We have no opportunity to ignore it unless we are given explicit exemption. So until such time as we have those exemptions, we will have to comply with the PFMA. There is simply no alternative.
Thank you, Andre. Mwangi, I must say, if you can help us on your question there by sending your email to mediadesk@eskom.co.za if you have any particular evidence of the disappearing matters units, we can assist finding a response to that if that is an Eskom customer you're talking about. The next question comes from Joy Summers, Carte Blanche. A couple of weeks ago, Jan Oberholzer highlighted that skilled workers were leaving Koeberg Power Station. What has been done to stay tight, and why skilled technicians at Koeberg so unhappy? Andre, do we have unhappy workers at Koeberg, and why are they leaving?
I don't think it's a question of being unhappy, Joy. It's a question of these being highly skilled and highly experienced, and they are very desirable in the global marketplace. So we have had a number of predominantly Middle Eastern countries that have approached some of our operators and offering them packages 3 times what the Eskom package is. So it's got very little to do with levels of motivation and a lot to do with the amount of money that people can earn. These are globally sought after skills. Eskom's got a good reputation in the nuclear industry in terms of operator skills, and therefore we have been losing staff internationally rather than due to any issue with staff morale or dissatisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you for that response, Andre. At this point, we have dealt with all the written questions and the one written, the one audio that we had from Wangi. Colleagues, the time is now 9:36. If there is any last question, if possible, then we close. There is a hand up. Mariam Isa. Please unmute yourself. So please mute yourself. Mariam, please unmute yourself and talk to us.
Thank you. Yeah, it's again just to follow up to Koeberg. With all the flight of skills and people, is this making it any more difficult or challenging to operate Koeberg? Thank you.
Before you take that question, Andre, I've got one last question. It comes from Toli Mgambi from Newsroom Africa. It's on a WhatsApp. What has been the response from the GME? I would think that MRE on the 4,000 to 6,000 megawatt supply deficit that Eskom has been talking about. Can you take both those, Andre, and then you can close. Mariam, please do unmute yourself.
Right. In terms of the Coburg challenge, we are dealing with that from an HR perspective to ensure that we have adequate retention mechanisms in place. At this point in time, the department that is particularly affected is the maintenance department. So we are augmenting skills there, and we are making sure that we can carry out the maintenance as is required. I may just add that in terms of benchmarking done by the World Association of Nuclear Operators, an entity called WANO, which Eskom is a member of, we recently had an extensive visit from a benchmarking team who went to the station, did extensive inspections and interviews. They also highlighted the skills issue. But the positive news was that where Coburg had previously been a station in special focus in terms of the ranking that WANO applies, this special focus has now been removed, lifted, and we are now again a station that is in the normal performance metrics as by WANO. So we are very pleased with the huge effort that has gone into turning Coburg around. Ridevan Bakadien, our Chief Nuclear Officer, has been doing an absolutely sterling job there in providing leadership to the station, and we are very happy with this improvement independently benchmarked in the performance of Coburg. So I think I know Coburg is always an emotional issue and people are very quick to get very anxious about it, but I can give the country and specifically Cape Townians the assurance that the plant is safe, is well operated, it is well looked after, and this is confirmed not only by Eskom but also by independent national benchmarking. Right, Sikonati, the final question that you got.
Andre, the final question is, what has the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy done about Eskom's request, or what has been their response on the 4,000 megawatt to 6,000 megawatt supply deficit that we have been talking about?
Thanks, Sikonati. So I think the important point to stress is that Eskom is designated as the single buyer of electricity in terms of power purchase agreements that are the outcome of procurement processes run by the Independent Power Producer Office, which reports into the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. So the procurement is done by the IPP office, and then Eskom is requested to sign the agreement. So Eskom does not have the ability to go out in the market and invite bids for the supply of electricity. There are certain very limited exceptions, but these are for very small megawatts. The big movements can only come at this point in time from the IPP office. Of course, the recent announcement by the President that the licensing restriction for so-called own or embedded generation has been lifted from 1 to 100 megawatts has created another window, and we understand that NERSA has now published its requirement. The opportunity for the private sector to now invest and wheel over the grid to their own customers without a power purchase agreement from Eskom, that opportunity has now been created, and we look forward to that being implemented, and that can be part of the solution going forward. The DMRE have run two processes. There was the Emergency Power Procurement Program. That program has met with some legal challenges. We await the outcome of those legal challenges. So at this point in time, the program is unfortunately held in abeyance, and there is nothing that Eskom can do about that. And then, as we said during the previous week, we're very pleased to see the announcement of the preferred bidders for approximately 2,600 megawatts for bid window 5, the renewable energy independent power producer program, bid window 5, and those bids have come in at an average cost of about 42 to 45 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on how you slice and dice the bids, which is highly competitive, really attractive costs, and we look forward to those processes being concluded as quickly as possible, again, that we can get the megawatts on the grid as soon as possible. Colleagues, unfortunately, as we have been speaking, there have been additional developments which shows that the system is indeed very finely balanced and that it's a very dynamic situation that we have been dealing with. Due to the loss of Medupi, Kendall and Duva units, we now have insufficient generation capacity at our disposal, and as such we have no alternative but to implement stage 2 load shedding from 2 o'clock this afternoon until 5 o'clock on Saturday morning, the 20th of November. Again, our apologies for that, but we have a challenge with our remaining emergency reserves. Forecasting our projected diesel consumption has put us in a position where we are likely to deplete our diesel reserves too quickly, and that will create an undue amount of risk in the system, and consequently we have to preserve our emergency reserves, and the necessary implication of that is that stage 2 load shedding, just to repeat, will be implemented from 2 o'clock this afternoon until 5 o'clock on Saturday morning, the 20th of November. So, with that bad news, I think we have come to the end of this media conference.
Thank you, Andre. Colleagues, thank you. On that note, then we have to close the conference, and so that I can release the statement as soon as possible. Thank you again for attending at short notice. We will, as we have committed previously, keep the country informed at all times. Just one point, Andre. Are we able to host another update perhaps tomorrow, or this is it for now until the situation changes?
No, we will do another tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and have yourselves a great day.